All right, everyone, welcome to a brand new week of morning briefings on the Celtic way. It's a week that will see Celtic return and the ultra marathon period begin. And it's a week that's starting without Tony, Ryan, because he's away on holiday, you saying?
I think he's just off. I think he's in Scotland at the moment. I was speaking to him last night, but I think he's just taking the last of his annual leave. It's going to be a busy period from now until March, you would say. But you're getting into the festive period. I guess he's just taking some downtime with his dogs probably as well. I had the pleasure of meeting his dogs last week, and I know what the hassle is all about with them. They're all brilliant, all five of them. So yeah, hopefully he's enjoying his time off. I know he was off on Friday as well, but he'll be back on tomorrow to anybody that's missing him. So it's just me and Hamish today.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's just getting their stuff out of the way and their stuff all in line for what's to come this busy 4-month period with these big games and 4 competitions. And we're only a matter of days now away from it beginning. And it begins with a bit of a cracker on Saturday night away to Hearts. Can't wait for that game. So, yeah, loads to chat about. Morning, everyone. Morning, Martin and Joe and Francis. And Smell the Glove. The weekend was brutal, Smell the Glove says. Was it brutal, Ryan?
I'm trying to think. Was the weekend brutal? No, it was pretty stress free, to be honest with you. I didn't watch the Scotland game on Friday. I kind of kept up to date with the highlights, and then I got loads of notifications about 10 minutes before the end. I'd seen that Croatia had got a man sent off just before the end of the first half, and then there was loads of notifications. So I'm guessing Scotland must have scored, and they did. So that was absolutely brilliant. I'll definitely be tuning in tonight to the Scotland v Poland game. Quite a big game, actually, in the face of it, in terms of Scotland staying in Group A or in A of the league format in the Nations League. Am I right in saying that there's no Nations League for another 2 years after this point? Somebody was saying that on X or Twitter or Blue Sky last night. I'm not sure where I seen that, but yeah, if that's the case, then I don't think I'd be complaining, because it just seems as if there's so much international football at this point. Yeah. One international break every month. It's exhausting, but then you want to be exhausted in a different way from how many games that Celtic are going to have. Got to enjoy this down period while you've got it, because this time next week we'll be right into the thick of it, talking about Champions League games, talking about the Hearts game. I know we've made a point not to preview that Hearts game until at least Wednesday, because we did that with the Aberdeen game, and there's still plenty to talk about with regard to Celtic, even though the game isn't for another 5-6 days.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really wants to hear us rabbiting on about a trip to Tynecastle 5 days ahead, so we'll hold fire on that. Please let that be true. Oh, he's talking about what you just said. I don't know about that, to be honest. To be honest, I'm kind of struggling to relate to the UEFA Nations League.
Yeah, me too.
I've not watched any Scotland game. When you're talking about Scotland potentially needing a result tonight to stay up, my mind isn't quite feeling that as a real kind of moment of jeopardy, to be honest. For me, international football is about the main tournaments in the Nations League. I think it's got a way to go, but maybe that happens over time. Yeah, great. Lovely to have you all with us. As we say, we're going to go into a busy period. It'd be great to have you all on board as subscribers. Ryan, I was looking, we're at 12.4k now, which I think has jumped up a fair bit over the last few weeks. So thanks everyone who's joined us. Let us know if you've joined us recently as a subscriber, and if you're getting like alerts when we go live. And if you're not done it yet and you fancy doing it, it costs absolutely nothing. I was about to say it takes 2 minutes. It takes 5 seconds out of your day. It would be much appreciated. What Liam Scales, was a boy talking about, was sent off last night. Did he score an own goal as well, or was it a mistake for one of the goals?
I believe it was nothing each when he gets sent off. You could say that Ireland's defence was made of Liam Scales, and then
he gave away a penalty. He went off
he did. He gave away the penalty that led to the second yellow card that led to Ireland's downfall on the night. They get fairly hammered by England. A much changed England team. There was a couple of new names in there that you'd heard in club football. Former Celtic target as well, Taylor Harwood-Bellis. For these names that you just remember. I remember him being linked with the club. I think that was in Ange Postecoglou's first season. It was before he would have went out on loan to Coventry, I believe. I know he's at Southampton permanently at the moment. He seems like a pretty good young talent. He came from the Man City Academy, so we know all about him. Celtic would know all about him just due to their links with the City group. Yeah, he seemed to be having a really good game. Now, I did, and I will put my hands up and said I did post the Liam Scales tackle on Harry Kane. I then muted that tweet after that because I knew that it would get bombarded because he gets sent off. So I just did not want to see any of that. But by all accounts, he was having a good game up until getting sent off. And then from then on, Ireland just completely crumbled. And you don't want to go down to 10 men against England, even if it is a much changed England side with different players coming onto the park. They've got so many good youngsters and good established players. You don't need to give them any second invitation to go and score goals. And that's certainly what they did. So an unfortunate night for him, an unfortunate night for Arne Engels too, who played, I think, 93 minutes against Israel.
Came on last minute, came off.
Yeah. He played the last two games for Belgium.
Played 70 minutes against Italy. I looked at the Belgium team and they're clearly trying to blood their next generation. Still some recognisable players there. Lois Openda, who was extremely quiet when we played them a couple of weeks ago, but good player. Trossard was in the midfield with Engels, and Castagna, another former Celtic transfer target. Kuhn Casteels, another one. God.
It's just a merry-go-round of Celtic targets, isn't it? You just remember all these names and Celtic being linked with them. Just shows you that the footballing world isn't that big. It feels massive, but the amount of targets that just come around. And then, also playing for Israel last night was Oscar Glock, who was linked with Celtic at one point too. I think he's at Red Bull Salzburg at this moment in time and tearing it up for them. So, the scouts are in the right place. You've got all these international players plying their trade in the highest level. It's just all about Celtic getting these deals over the line and making sure that they can that they work. But the scouting system's been working well recently, so no complaints there whatsoever.
So consensus from you legend seems to be that Scales did all right, even though he was sent off, and that Ireland fell to bits once he went off, says Waza Boy.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make. I didn't word it correctly, but yeah, I was making that point that they were playing well, then Scales gets sent off, and then they conceded 5 goals. I know he was a big part of the first goal being conceded, Harry Kane scoring from the penalty spot. But yeah, by all accounts, he had a good game. It's just these things happen, especially in international football, coming up against top class players. Well, I guess we'll always have that tackle against Harry Kane. That'll be the moment that I'll remember, surely. Certainly.
That's your Kieran Tierney, Andy Robertson moment from the Euros in the summer for Scotland.
Anthony Ralston against Neymar for PSG.
God. So Engels played.
That was Barcelona. That was Barcelona. What am I saying? That wasn't even PSG. It was Barcelona.
What?
Or was it?
PSG. It was a 5-0 PSG game. Yeah, it was Neymar, wasn't it? Because you're maybe thinking of the Scott Brown and Neymar one. Remember in the 1-0 game against Barcelona when Scott Brown was sent off? You might have two things going on in your mind, but Neymar, never really liked Neymar. But anyway, we don't need to spend
That's the problem, Hamish. I did like Neymar until all that happened. So I had a really split view, and then he played. When somebody that you've admired from afar, I enjoyed watching him for Brazil, etc. And then when he started these nonsense against Celtic in the Champions League, it wasn't the greatest. So yeah, I wasn't part of the Neymar fan club after that.
Elsewhere, not featuring on international duty is Nicholas Kuhn, but he has been spoken about by none other than Germany boss Julian Nagelsmann. Now, he's clearly been asked about Either, I don't know if I've not heard the question in Germany whether it was he was asked directly about Kuhn. I would say probably would have been, or whether he was just asked about players on the fringes that he's keeping an eye on. But the quote from Nagelsmann on Nicholas Kuhn: Kuhn is also a good player with a lot of desire. He's someone we're keeping an eye on, but calling up a new player always means excluding another. So I guess whatever way you look at it, this is kind of pretty cool, I would say. Nagelsmann is aware of Kuhn, but the very fact I think that Kuhn's been spoken about either by Nagelsmann or by someone in the media in Germany, almost could have been spoken about by someone in the media in Germany's a bigger deal, because it shows that people are very aware. I guess the fact that Kuhn played so well and scored those goals against a German team in the Champions League will have had a huge saying in that. Maybe if he'd done it against a team from another country, it might not have had the same impact. But yeah, Nicholas Kuhn, I mean, Germany have an unbelievable array of attacking talents, quite possibly the best of any nation, I think, looking at some of Wirtz and Musiala and Havertz, and I mean, those guys are unbelievable. So it's a hell of a task for Kuhn to ever get in. I'd still say it's going to be a struggle, but the fact he's been spoken about, I think, is huge news.
Yeah, and they've got a couple of really, really good youngsters coming through as well. The striker at Borussia Dortmund, whose name escapes me, it's not Adeyemi, it's a new player. They brought him in from Hoffenheim in the summer.
Did he score against us?
Adeyemi, or the new. No, he didn't. I think he was left on the bench against Celtic. But I know they've brought in a 19, 20-year-old. I think he came from Hoffenheim, and a lot of people are talking about him as being the next German talent up front. But on the wings, you would say that they're probably aging a little bit, because Leroy Sané isn't getting any younger. It feels as if he's been about forever. He'll be about 27, 28 years old. Serge Gnabry will be the same. So there is an opportunity for Nicholas Kuhn to really make his presence felt on the wings. I think Adeyemi plays there too for Germany. So there's good young talent coming through in those positions. Though I guess the one negative that comes with all of this is the more exposure that Kuhn gets, and if he is getting called up for national teams or getting talked about or spoke about for national teams, it means that his future will be away from Celtic, unfortunately. But I think people have just got to embrace that and be with the fact that, you know, it's the model, it's working. Yeah, if he gets a call up for Germany, the chances of him staying at Celtic are very, very slim. But that's testament to him and how well he's played.
That's just it, though. Like that. It's the same. It's the same with any player. I mean, like, we were all terrified of losing. Okay, we're all terrified of losing Matt O'Reilly, and if you've got the replacement model in place, transfer wise, to be able to identify players who can come in, you can pay a bit more money because you've got a bit more money because you've just sold a player for so much money, and then you replace that player like we've done with Engels for O'Reilly. I know there's a bit to go yet. I've not heard too many people, bemoaning the fact that Matt O'Reilly's no longer with us. And Matt O'Reilly was a brilliant player for Celtic, but it just shows that if you spend money to replace these players, then that's how the transfer model works. So, I mean, I don't think we even need to have the conversation about Kuhn moving on yet. I mean, Kuhn needs to do it for a longer period of time. He's been spectacular, but he's only done it for 4 months. We need at least a full season, I think, before we're going to get these massive bids. You would maybe say even 2 seasons, because it's tended to be 2 seasons with our star players, if not longer, over the last 10 years. But that's just the model. So I think any exposure he would get for Germany would be good news from a Celtic point of view. You want these guys to reach the highest level they possibly can while playing for Celtic, because then it shows the future Nicholas Kuhns that we sign that, you know, you can play for the top nations. I still think it's a way off in terms of him being called up because they have so much talent. But as I say, the fact he's been spoken about, I think, is huge news. I mean, imagine you just said that 4 or 5 months ago that imagine during the Euros, I'd said to you, by the way, November this year, you'll have that Germany manager will be asked about Nicholas Kuhn. You'd be laughing.
You would, especially after the first sort of 5-6 months of his Celtic career. But that's why you've got to allow a player to settle. And I think the same will be said for Engels. You've got to let this player settle before really casting a judgment on a player, even despite his price tag. Nicholas Kuhn was brought in for 3 million as well. He was expected to make a difference, and he did score some goals in the first half of his first season, but it's really been, I think it's been those pre-season games against Manchester City and Chelsea. He's very much a confidence player, like most wingers are, to be honest. They really do thrive on confidence. I feel like he's just been on this train since those games and really brought it into the league, the league form, scoring goals against Ross County, against Hibs, etc., scoring at Kilmarnock too. Kuhn wasn't scoring that goal last season, that goal that he scored against Kilmarnock. That was a goal full of confidence. And, the assist from Johnson was good as well. But that assist came because of the fact that Johnson trusted Kuhn to get on the end of the cross. He lofted it into the air because he knew that Kuhn could run onto the end of it and make something happen at the other end of the park. It was route one, but it was absolutely brilliant route one stuff. And I think you can be effective while playing that. It was great to see, Kuhn adding another number to his resume. That's 21 goals and assists already this season, which is an incredible number for, the middle of November. You take into account that Celtic have had international breaks as well. He'd probably have more if it wasn't for these breaks that are happening as well. But he's been consistent. He's been making things happen, whether that be goals, assists, or overall play. And I just see that continuing from now until the end of the season. If he keeps on going and his trajectory continues to rise, and if he gets a call up at the end of the season, then I would expect him to go in the summer, because I think the vultures will be swooping for him. Is it the best move for his career? Maybe not, but I think the prices will be 20, 25, 30 million for a player. If he is called up, if he is to get called up to the German national team, his value increases because he's a part of that national team, and they know all about him because he's represented Germany in every level up to under 21. If he can make that step and become a fully fledged international, then Celtic will have another asset on their hands. I think they already do, but even more of one if he becomes a fully fledged member of the national team.
The thing I love about Kuhn is that he's so laid back. Like, you can tell that, like, he's not fazed by anything, and I think you see that on the pitch in the biggest of games. I feel like in the past, Celtic at that Champions League level, the players have like done one thing at domestic level, and then when they've got to Champions League level, for whatever reason, they've changed the way they do things, and maybe normal things they would do domestically, they've not been able to pull off at Champions League level. And obviously a big part of that is you're going up the levels, teams make you feel more uncomfortable, etc. But I think we've got a number of players in this current team right now who view the Champions League as where they should be performing, and I feel like that's different to maybe where we were in recent years, where the Champions League was viewed as like this huge step up where the players could try and compete. It feels to me like now that we have guys like Engels, clearly a very confident but cool guy. Guys like Kuhn, same. Real Hatate views himself at that Champions League level, and it's obviously all led by Callum McGregor as well. And I just think Kuhn's a perfect example of that. I think he's going to get more confidence from that Leipzig game, and not. I just think that there's even more to come from him. I think we're going to see more top performances at that Champions League level, and his figures this season are fabulous. If he was from like 95% of the other nations on the planet, he'd be a full international.
That's very true. Yeah, he'd be probably one of their nation's best players. Unfortunately, it's Germany, and Germany have always got that revolving door of good talent on the wing, especially attacking talent. Now, I know they're good defensively as well. They've maybe not had the results that they would have wanted in recent years, the past 6 to 10 years after the World Cup. It's been pretty disappointing for them, but it's all about that next generation, and Kuhn can definitely be a part of that. He's got all the talent in the world. It's just all about consistency, and now he's shown that consistency for Celtic. He will say if he is to move on in the near future, he will say that Celtic was a real sort of breakout moment for him, playing for a big team, playing for, it's different playing for Bayern Munich's second team, Ajax's second team, RB Leipzig's second team, playing for Celtic's first team and having that pressure every week to deliver. A draw is just as bad as a defeat. Having that mentality will only help a player like Nicholas Kuhn. And we're seeing the birth of a star here. Who knows how far he can go in his career? But right now he's doing it for Celtic, and he's one of the first names on the team sheet. He's got that right wing position on lock basically. When Celtic bring out a team, it's a shock if Kuhn isn't on it, and you're like,
yeah.
Is he injured? Because and that wasn't always the case last season, because James Forrest had a good end to the season, but that was down to the fact that Nicholas Kuhn was not firing on all cylinders. Now there isn't even a debate anymore. Forrest sits on the bench because Nicholas Kuhn is the first choice right winger.
But Forrest has still got something to offer, and I think he's one of the many players we're going to see over the next few months playing games here and there. And I think James Forrest has been pretty good whenever he's played this season as well. Right, a few people asking about Japan. What's the situation there? So they played one of their 2 games so far. They beat Indonesia the other night, and I think Hatate and Maeda were both involved off the bench. Maeda got the second half. Hatate got the final 10 minutes. Kyogo was an unused sub after Moriyasu talking him up. Oh well. And Japan play China tomorrow at noon for you guys. So people will be able to watch that tomorrow at noon away to China. And yeah, Japan are looking pretty good for qualification. They're actually in Australia's group, and they have 13 points from a possible 15, so pretty much through. So maybe that means we'll see a bit more of Hatate or Kyogo tomorrow. I think Maeda's a bit more of a regular, although I don't think he's been starting many games. But the main thing, obviously, just hoping that these players can come through injury-free.
Yeah, it's good exposure for these players to even be on the trips with Japan, and it's I think it's a confidence booster, the fact that Moriyasu wants to have them in the team, especially Kyogo, because he's had to work hard. He's had to work really hard to get back into that international setup. He's been in the wilderness for so long. Every team that or every international squad that comes out and Kyogo's not in it, there's always seems to be that disappointment. So it was great to even see his name considered. I hope against China that the likes of Maeda and Hatate can start the game injury-free. Fingers crossed, but I would like to see them get that representation for Japan. It's a really good Japan squad. The team is littered with players that are playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe, and that's maybe the difference. That's maybe the difference. The reason why Hatate, Maeda, and Kyogo aren't featuring more regularly is because this manager views playing in the top 5 leagues as being more important and having that exposure. The likes of Kamada that plays for Crystal Palace. You've got Mitoma that plays for Brighton. Endo that plays for Liverpool, although Fleetwood kind of comes off the bench for Minamino too. I think he plays for Monaco, I believe. He's been about the block. He used to play for Liverpool and then Salzburg before then. So you've got these players that are applying their trade at the highest level, and being in amongst that is good for these players. Maeda's done it at the World Cup. He did it 2 years ago. So he's got that experience of playing for Japan. But yeah, I'm delighted that they're in there. They're in about it, and hopefully they get more appearances as the days and weeks go on.
Yeah, as I repeat what I just said, staying injury free, the main thing for me. So hopefully that remains the case. Anything else on your mind at the moment? Because there is one wee thing that slightly controversial maybe, but I just want to bring up, and we can have a wee chat about it. It's laughing at Rangers, everyone, so that might go down well with you. Anything else before that, Ryan?
Because it's the international break, I feel like it's been a bit of a detox from football, to be honest. I think we're all enjoying it because we know what's coming. We know that from a couple of days from now against Hearts to March, it'll be pretty much non-stop. There's no winter break as well. So the whole squad is going to have to be utilised. Even the likes of Luke McCowan, James Forrest, having that Scottish core coming off the bench. They might even start games. It's all about. I think Brendan Rodgers is the best manager for that because he'll understand the players. He's got a personal relationship with each and every one of them, and he'll understand what players need to be taken out of the firing line, what players can be brought in. I'd even put Palma into that as well. Now he got 2 goals.
Scored a couple
for against Mexico. Mexico are a really good side, and Honduras beat them 2-0. So that was a great result for them, and that'll do him the world of good. Very much a confidence player like Nicholas Kuhn. You've got to remember, we were talking about Palmer the same way this time last year that we're talking about Kuhn right now. Maybe not as high, because Kuhn's doing it and he's more athletic and he's more. No, he doesn't have the pace, but the goals and the assists were there. They dried up after November, December time, and he's really struggled since. But he was the main player for Celtic this time last season. He could get back to that level. Maybe not to the main player level, because I think the team's more spread out with quality now. But I still think he can make a difference. I don't, and he's got that mentality and that attitude. He's been saying all the right things in Honduran media. He's annoyed with the way things are going at Celtic, but he's going to continue to push on and try and get back into Brendan Rodgers' plans. It's him against Maeda at the moment, and Maeda's pretty comfortable there, so it's up to him to make it uncomfortable and really put the pressure on him to deliver in every game. I want to see him succeed. Maybe his future lies elsewhere, but I'm kind of desperate for him to really show what he can do for Celtic once again, because the talent's there. The pace isn't there. We all know that he's got no pace, but the talent is there, and you just want to see him put it all together.
I remember him having a really good game at Tynecastle last year. That really good pass for Matt O'Reilly's goal, that fabulous goal, might have been one of the best goals he scored last season. Obviously, go back to Tynecastle this Saturday. I don't think he'll be starting, but cannot wait for that game. I mean, what a cracker that's going to be. The fact it's a Saturday night game just adds so much. I was trying to think if there's a reason for it being Saturday night. Are you aware of a reason?
I was having a look, and it's on Sky Sports now. Usually the late games, I mean, it's a 7:45 kickoff, so that does make sense for the fact that it's on Sky Sports. Premier Sports have been having these Saturday night games, and I believe there is a Saturday night game before that. It's a full fixture list. I would need to double check that, but I seem to remember hearing about that just before we came on this morning. But it's good. It's good, the exposure for Celtic playing in that late Saturday night at Tynecastle. You don't need to sell that. It sells itself, regardless of the predicament that Hearts are in.
It's a shame we won't have like a full stand there. That would have just added so much to the atmosphere, turning the game on, and it's not going to be like that. You're right, Dundee Hibs is the earlier game, so if you can basically sit through all afternoon into the late at night on Saturday and get your fix of Scottish football. No, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I just think games at Tynecastle, they sell themselves. It's always a great atmosphere to go to and experience, really close to the pitch as well. The fans are really close to the pitch. People can say if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it certainly adds to the atmosphere. It's always intimidating to go to, and you always feel as if you work for your wins. Celtic work for their wins whenever they get a victory at Tynecastle. Yeah, it's one of my favourite games to watch and go even as a spectator. I'm glad I'll be in the press box for that one as well. It'll be one hell of an atmosphere.
Rugby on Saturday, people are telling me, is that right?
I don't know. I know the Autumn's Nations series has been on recently for Scotland, so I'm not sure what the case is. But would that
Scotland Chile here, but that seems like it's Scotland A, and I didn't know Chile even had a rugby team. God, I'm looking up Autumn International rugby fixtures. What is happening here?
Well, Scotland were playing Portugal at the weekend in the rugby. I didn't know that Portugal had a rugby team as well. But you learn something new every day. They did beat them with a second string team.
25th. I'm trying to work out my dates with the time difference. I think Scotland are playing Australia at Murrayfield. I think that's in Sunday though. 24th.
Somebody in the call, Spell the Glove saying it's on Sunday, he believes. So maybe that's the reason why they're playing it Saturday night rather than Sunday.
Doesn't answer why it can be Saturday afternoon though, does it?
Like early afternoon.
Yeah.
Or like
I'm happy.
I don't know.
It's a good kickoff time for me personally, and I think the atmosphere will be great. It's just a shame we don't have more fans. The other thing I wanted to bring up just briefly is some quotes from Connor Goldson. I know. I don't know what I'm doing here, but he's been speaking a wee bit about the kind of mentality at Rangers, and particularly after they won the league, the COVID title, and basically the reaction their players had to winning that title in those circumstances, Ryan. I think it's quite interesting because he speaks basically, I'm not going to read out the quotes, but he basically says that the team weren't as hungry as they were the year before when they knew everything was on the line. He says he could feel it in pre-season. The running we'd done the year before, suddenly people didn't want to do that anymore. And I just find that kind of quote so interesting when you look at like this Celtic squad over the past decade who win not just one trophy a season, but they win 3 trophies most seasons. And then they come back the following season and more often than not go after all 3 again and just have this relentless attitude. And I just found it really interesting. Like, we've always fans, we all kind of see this thing happening with our rivals, and it's completely hilarious. And I love it. I love the fact they just don't have that winning mentality we have. But actually seeing a former Rangers player, a pretty key Rangers player at the time, saying that, and then you just compare it to like Callum McGregor and James Forrest and guys like that who are just totally relentless. I just find it's just a perfect example of the difference in standards at both clubs. And I think Goldson may have left, but I think the standards remain the same in terms of like Celtic are just so relentless going after 3 trophies. I think if we won 2 domestic trophies this season, I think Callum McGregor would be pretty happy, but would also feel a little bit of disappointment. He spoke about that after the Scottish Cup final. Remember, he said, we need to get all our trophies back next season. I think if Rangers won 1 trophy this season, maybe not their fans, but I think some of their players were looking at it and going, yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And that's just the total difference in standards. And I just wanted to bring up those quotes because I found them quite amusing.
It's mentality at the end of the day, and Celtic have got that winning mentality that I believe that Rangers threw the kitchen sink at it in the 10 in a row season. There was a number of factors that went into that league season. I think it's the worst thing that could have happened to them, the fact that they pushed, because since then Celtic have been
it's a total outlier.
Dominant. Yeah, and those comments that you said that they weren't willing to run, they were coming up against a Celtic team managed by Ange Postecoglou that were going to run and chase for lost causes. When you read those comments in isolation and you put them into that 3-0 game at Celtic Park in February 2022, then you understand why that happened, because there was a hungry side at Celtic Park with 60,000 fans. I remember the green mist going around the stadium, being at that game. Something special happened that night, but it was coming. They were dropping points beforehand in games. I remember in particular the Ross County game. They conceded a late goal, or they dropped points that day, and then Celtic scored late on against Dundee United, and that's the mentality. And Celtic still have this mentality even now. They look hungry. Look at the games against Ross County. Look at the games in the Champions League. Brendan Rodgers is driving those standards that Ange Postecoglou brought back to the club that I think were missing for a couple of seasons.
Who's the constant throughout the whole thing?
It's Callum McGregor, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Callum McGregor, and
captain.
He got so much stick in that 10 in a row season. A lot of it merited because he was not at his best. Granted, I think he was doing 2 jobs because Scott Brown's legs had gone, unfortunately. Regardless if you believe that or not, I feel like it was 1 season too many for Scott Brown, and it really did show. But Callum McGregor was doing 2 or 3 jobs in that midfield, and now, since then he's been absolutely immense. I think he's become a Celtic legend in these past 2-3 seasons for what he's done for the club. A tremendous captain. It's fit that role has fit him so perfectly because he's a different captain from Scott Brown. Scott Brown would bark orders at people and be intimidating. Cal McGregor allows his football to do the talking, and he's a tremendous football player. But having that, he was sort of the understudy to Scott Brown, but then he took everything from his own game, plus all those leadership skills from Scott Brown, and brought that into his own game. There's a reason why Celtic have got this winning mentality, and it's because it's been transferred from one captain to the next. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Celtic are they're well organised off the park. They're making good moves with the likes of Paul Tisdale, the scouting network. Even although the transfers didn't happen at the speed in which I would have liked in the summer, they got there in the end. The likes of Austin Trusty, Luke McCowan, Arnott Engels. things are looking really good. They've got assets all over the park. I cannot say the same for Rangers at this point in time, and that's the reason why I think the status quo will remain for a long time to come. Celtic should be winning 3 trophies a season. That should be the minimum. That plus the fact that there needs to be progression in Europe. It just so happens that that's happening this season, which is brilliant.
There's just such an obvious bit in Celtic history where things changed, and we went from a team who were winning the league title and maybe a cup during the Ronnie Deila days and Neil Lennon prior to that, when we really struggled at Hampden, had that really awful record, all those horrendous days at Hampden. And then in the middle of 2016, Brendan Rodgers arrives at the club and immediately the standards are just raised, and we go from a team who wins 1, maybe 2 trophies a season to a team that wins 3 every season. And that's just continued. Obviously, there's been the odd exception. The COVID season was the big one, but like the more you look at that COVID season, the more that you just realise there was a lot of other stuff going on, and it wasn't real football. You look at some of the champions in the various leagues that season, but even since then, I think it's been such a huge effort from Celtic since that season, because we've racked up another 4 league titles, another 1 treble, 2 doubles, and already this season we're looking good to add to that. So I just think that moment, Brendan Rodgers coming in the middle of 2016, we might, when all is said and done, look back at that as being one of the most momentous days in our club's history, because you think of all the winning that's been done since then. I think were we in like 99 trophies when Rodgers came in the first time? Because I'm sure that his first trophy was the club's 100th, and I think we're like, not like 120, something like that now, more than that. Like it's been a totally remarkable decade, and not even a decade. But the thing is, you just think it can keep going. I keep telling myself when all these amazing things are happening, it'll end one day, and it will end one day. But that day may be like way in the distance, because when you've got guys like Callum McGregor, and Brendan Rodgers driving these standards and just continually saying, you need to go after the next trophy, then you'll be absolutely fine. And obviously the fact we now appear to be, maybe for the first time in a good while, decade plus, doing something in Europe, it's like, oh my God, what an amazing time this is to be a Celtic fan.
Yeah, the result against RB Leipzig was a real eye-opener for me, because it was the best I'd ever seen Celtic play their own style of football. Now, they had to change in Europe for a number of years. Look at the Barcelona game. That was not an enjoyable watch. Again, the full-time whistle was absolutely tremendous, because they beat Barcelona, but they'd beaten them by containing them for 90 minutes and hitting them on the break twice. Also helped that they had an inspired performance from Fraser Forster. Celtic played their own football against RB Leipzig at home, and that was the most enjoyable thing for me. They transferred their league performances and the way they would play against league teams like Aberdeen, Hearts, Rangers, etc., to a European team, and really gave them their own medicine in terms of pressing and counter-pressing. So, when you look at that game and then you look at the next game against Club Brugge, who had a really good result against Aston Villa, but I still think it's a game that Celtic can very much win. If they win that, then they put themselves in a tremendous position to going into the playoffs. At least, it's a tall order. It's a big ask going through in the top 8 with the remaining fixtures and the way that other teams will likely get their points and accumulate their points. But you can dare to dream. If Celtic get 3 points against Brugge, you can dream. Because then if you get another 2 wins, you're going to Aston Villa and Birmingham with that potential there. These are uncharted waters for Celtic, the fact that they're doing so well in Europe at the moment. We've had to put up with so much, really subpar performances in Europe. You look at the PSGs, the Barcelonas, even in the Europa League in the COVID season against AC Milan, Sparta Prague twice. Now Celtic are beating teams like RB Leipzig, Slovan Bratislava, getting points away from home to Atalanta too. So it's a really good position, and you can see why that winning mentality is there, because it's been transferred from player to player. Even new players that are coming in are feeding off the likes of Callum McGregor, that winning mentality from other players, even like Tony Ralston, Greg Taylor, Alistair Johnson to an extent. they've all got that winning mentality, and they're just transferring it onto the next player and the next player, and that's why there's a good continuity in the team. And long may that continue. Hopefully the status quo can continue and Celtic continue to dominate, because it's a pretty good place to be when that's the case.
And that sets us up nicely for Celtic's return. And I don't know about you, but I kind of can't wait for Celtic to get back in action
absolutely.
This Saturday. Okay, I think that's us for now. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you coming on and chatting. We'll continue this tomorrow and onwards. I think Tony will be back tomorrow. Kevin potentially with us as well. And yeah, we'll just continue the build-up. So thanks everyone for watching. If you've not managed to subscribe yet to the channel and fancy doing it, that really would be appreciated. And we will catch up with you this time tomorrow. Speak to you then.